Hello and welcome to Sunday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, where in a week of stunning debuts I hope we'll be in for another one today. This on screen is by the setter tallcat, obviously distinguishing himself from totally normal cat by the adjective tall, and well, it's unusual because it has a 5-star out of 5 difficulty rating on Logic Masters Germany and a 100% approval rating, so it should be pretty incredible. And in fact, it is incredible. I believe this is tallcat's third puzzle ever. So yesterday we featured a puzzle by Fluster, which I think was Fluster's first puzzle ever and was a masterpiece. This one obviously is very highly recommended, and it's only tallcat's third puzzle. And tallcat wrote an email to us saying that he set this in response to Jovial's setting video. So if you've not seen Jovial's setting video, which we released probably 3 weeks ago on the channel, check it out, because you can watch that video and then create magic, it seems. This one is called The Barrel. And in fact, speaking of setting videos, we're going to release another one tomorrow. So Lucy Odrin's video on how she set the return of the pentominous odds will appear probably tomorrow morning UK time. And one thing that fascinated me about that video is that Lucy actually recorded her entire process of making the puzzle start to finish, literally screen grabbed the whole thing. And that screen grab is running in the background of the video, obviously sped up a lot. So the hours and hours and hours of work are sort of condensed into just 10 minutes. So it's really quite something. And that'll come out tomorrow. I don't have news yet on our Arrow Sudoku app. I was thinking we might save this puzzle for the release of that app, because obviously this is a standard Arrow Sudoku that is very highly rated, so it sort of fits in with the theme. But because I don't know when the Arrow Sudoku app is coming out, I thought, well, why don't we just get on with this anyway? What I will do is, as soon as I have news on the actual release date of the Arrow app, I will tweet about it, and our Twitter is @CrypticCracking. So if you follow us over there, you'll be the first to know. With all that said, let's get on with this one. What are the rules? Well, normal Sudoku rules apply. Digits on arrows must sum to the digit in that arrow's circle, and digits may repeat on arrows if allowed by other rules. So what this means is, let's pick this arrow here. We can put some digits on this arrow. Let's put 1, 4 and 3 on the arrow. Then in the circle, we would have to put the sum of 1, 4 and 3. That's 8. But also bear in mind that in deciding what can go on this arrow, it's absolutely fine to repeat digits, because well, we can't repeat those 2 digits. That would be very bad and against the rules of Sudoku, and you will get into trouble for that. But for example, these 2 squares could be the same. So you could have double 2, 4 there, or you could do it that way round. You pays your money, you takes your choice. So that's how Arrow Sudoku works. Fairly straightforward. Do have a go. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now I should be in top form on Arrow Sudoku, because I have done an absolute multitude of them over the last few weeks. So it will be disappointing indeed if I make a complete mess of this. Now, top row, I'm seeing 6 arrow cells. Now something I've learnt is that it's often quite a good idea to see what the minimum value it is that you can put on arrows if they're sort of all confined to a row, column or box. So here, because these 6 cells all have to be different, if we make them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, that adds up to 21. So we know that the circles, in fact no, there's another cell here as well that will have to be filled. So it's true to say that they are 21 minimum, but we've still got to add this little arrow cell in. So that makes 22. So these 5 cells must sum to at least 22, which isn't actually quite as good as I was hoping for, because we could put double 9 in here. This could be a 9, that could be a 9, or this could be a 9 and that could be 9. So all we've actually learned is that there has to be a 4 at least in all of these squares. Why don't we notate that? It's a slightly frivolous pencil mark, but we'll do it. Okay. Although actually 4 will not work in that look, because you'd have to go 1, 3 here, and then this digit wouldn't have a cell, wouldn't be able to be filled. So we can get rid of 4 into that square. Okay, no, not seeing much else at the top of the grid. Oh, let's take it back to first principles. We've got 3 cells here in the same box of the Sudoku. So the minimum I can make those 3 squares is 1, 2, and 3. So this square has to be 6, 7, 8, or 9. No, yeah, that's also... Well, that's interesting. But it's not yet enough, is it? Ah, we've got 6 cells in row 5 as well. So in fact, we've got exactly the same. Oh no, it's better. It's better because here we've got 2 extra cells. Look, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as the minimum for row 5's arrow cells. That's 21, and then you've got 2 cells in row 4. Now, if we make those 1 and 2, that's 24. So 21 plus 3 is 24. So these circles now have to add up to at least 24. Now again, double 9 is certainly possible, for example, in those squares. But this time at least we know we have to... 6 is the minimum we can put on any of these individual cells. So we're suddenly getting a whole multitude of cells that can only be 6, 7, 8, and 9. This one... Oh, bother. That doesn't do anything. I was just noticing that's got 3 cells in the same box, so that's proving that this individually would have to be 6, 7, 8, and 9. So perhaps I should focus on the arrows individually rather than keep trying to do sort of geometry tricks. This arrow, look, that's got to be 6, 7, 8, and 9 because that's got 3 cells in the same box. So 1, 2, and 3 adds up to at least 6. So we're almost getting somewhere. Look, in column 1. We've still got a whole bundle of cells in row 9. Ah, right. I see. Bother. Right, okay. So what we should have done, first of all... Just wondering if I can get... There's a whole load of stuff I've spotted here, actually. The first thing I've spotted is the positions of 9s in this grid are incredibly limited. Because if we look at row 1, row 5, and row 9 now, look where the 9s can go. Only in these cells. Because you can never put a 9 on an arrow. Because if you try and put a 9 on an arrow, unless the arrow is only 1 cell long, you will definitely reach a total of 10 or more. So, if these cells are the only cells in these rows that can contain 9s, and they are, we now know that there is a real restriction, in fact this is going to be beautiful, on 9s in all of these squares, because this is a swordfish pattern. Now, if you don't understand why I'm highlighting these cells I've outlined in blue and I'm saying there can't be a 9 in any of these cells, the way to think about it is to consider what a correct solution to this puzzle will look like. And if I ask you how many 9s we'll find in column 1 in a correct solution to this puzzle, you would instantly tell me, well, there'll only be 1 9, and you'd be quite right. There can only be 1 9 in this column of the Sudoku, and there won't be 0 9s, because that would mean we've made a mistake. So there will be 1 9 in this column. In a correct solution to column 6, there will be another 9. There will be 1 9, and in a correct solution to column 9, there will be 1 9. So we know that these 3 columns will have exactly 3 9s in them in the finished grid. But we know that those 3 9s are actually being provided by these 3 rows, because we know that the 9 in row 1 must be in one of those columns. We know the 9 in row 5 must be in one of those columns, and we know the 9 in row 9 must be in one of those columns. So we have found, we've found very loosely where the 3 9s in these columns go. We don't know how they're disposed around the purple squares, but we know that they must be in the purple squares. Now, if we were to try and put a 9 here, for example, what would the implication of this be? Well, this would be a 4th 9 in these 3 columns, and that doesn't work. You will definitely end up with a repeated 9. So hopefully that makes it clearer why we're not going to be able to put 9s in any of those cells. And you can see immediately, this is really interesting, because we can rule out 9s straight away from these circles. Now the other thing, just to go back to, I had two thoughts about these cells. The other thought was maybe I can... No, I can't. Bother. Okay, this is not quite as powerful as these other positions, because what I was planning to do was add up these cells at a minimum, and you can see these cells would have a minimum value of 21 again, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, nori nori. Now, here we've got to add at least 6 to that, 1 plus 2 plus 3. So we'd actually end up with a 27 total minimum for these arrows. But look, there are actually 4 circles here. And that's what I'd missed. There are 4 circles contributing to that 27 minimum total. So it's far less restricted than when we only had 3 circles to think about, for example, in these 3 here, and when we did it there as well. So I'm not sure that my second thought was a terribly good one, but the first thought was still useful. The swordfish has definitely done something. So what has it done exactly? So it's removed 9 from those two. Now those two were in a relationship with this one. We've got these sort of planets spinning round each other, because these 3 here, I'll highlight those in blue, relate to these cells here on the arrows, which we know had to add up to at least 24. So now we can't use... right, well this is straightforward. Right, okay. So the question is, how do we get 3 different digits in a Sudoku to sum to 24? Now, one way would be 3/8. Now, can we use 3/8 in the blue squares? It's not a trick question. The answer is no, because if we have 3/8 in the blue squares, we'll definitely end up with 2/8 in row 3, and that won't work. So if we can't have 3/8, we must have a 9. We must have a 9. Because if you can't have 3/8, one of the digits will have to be lower than 8, and one of them will therefore have to be higher. Which one can be higher? Only that one. So that's a 9. That's our first digit. And now we're interested. Now I've spotted 2 more things. Right. Remember that whenever a 3-cell arrow loses the capability of being a 9, it must have a 1 on its arrow. So there's a 1 here, and there's a 1 down there. Which maybe that's not as important as I was thinking it might be, actually. Right. So, okay, I'm not sure I can do anything with that. 9 here is removing the possibility of this being a 9. So the 9 in row 1 is in one of 2 places now. I'm going to get rid of the highlighting in this square. So 9 in one of these 2 positions. And... right, okay, and now we can go... I think we can eliminate 6s from both of those squares, can't we? Because if we have 9 and 6, that's 15. Now we know the greens are adding to at least 24, so we'd need a second 9 to go along with the 6, and we can't put 9 in either of those squares. This one because of Sudoku and Swordfish, this one just because of Swordfish. So we can get rid of 6s from both of those squares. Now this one must have a 1 on it. That's got 3 cells in its box, adding up to a 7 or an 8. Okay. A 6, 7, 8 triple in this column. What's that doing? That's interesting. My gut reaction is that's doing something to row 5. Is that correct? And the reason I'm thinking about row 5 is that I simply can't put lots and lots of high digits on the arrows here, because I minimize this to get to 24, but the maximum value I can possibly put into these 3 squares now is 25, and that's with 889. So I can't go putting, loads of 8s and 7s on these arrows. Yeah, okay. So I think this is a sensible thought, because if the minimum is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 into these squares, and I've got 1 degree of freedom, then I can change the 6 to a 7. That is possible in this row, but I can't do anything other than that. Anything other than that will increase the total by too much. So this is either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Therefore, these squares are always 8 and 9, and then they're either 6 or 7 depending on which digit is used on the arrow, the 6 or the 7. Now this is gorgeous, because this little square is indeed a naked single now, because it sees 6, 7, 8 as a triple there. So that becomes a 9. One of these 2 squares is an 8 now. We can get rid of the 9 purples from the swordfish, because we've now basically found the 9 that we needed to find in column 1 and indeed in row 5. These 2 can no longer be 9, so we're left with 9s either in this orientation of. So what we've effectively got left is an x-wing. We're either going to have 9s here and here in the finished solution, or 9s here and here. But the effect is the same. We haven't increased the effect. It's just ruling 9 out from these squares, which we already knew about. So there must be an 8 in one of those 2 squares. That might be worth remembering. I'll highlight across boxes, which I don't like doing, but I'll change the colour to try and remind me. Now 9 must be in one of those 2 squares, because it can never be on a 3-cell arrow. And we pause for thought. To do what exactly? Have I learnt anything about these top? No, I haven't really, have I? So I'm not sure I've sort of learned anything about the top 3 circles that I didn't already know. Have I learned anything about the bottom 3 circles as a result of this? Or bottom 4 circles, I suppose I should be more precise. I'm not sure, actually. All right, let's come back to the middle. Have I learned anything about the middle circles I didn't already know? Okay, so maybe I need to be thinking about these arrows. No, what I was just wondering is that if it gets complicated, to be honest. I was wondering if I could force, if this was, say, a 6 arrow and this was a 7 arrow, you'd know that you'd have 1, 2 here. And then you'd actually know this square would have to be a 1 or a 2. Because if you put the 1 and the 2 there in box 7, you'd have to put a 1 and a 2 in this triple, which is impossible. There's only 1 free cell. So I feel like this square, the one that's highlighted, is going to be restricted a bit by reference to whatever we put on these 3-cell arrows in boxes 1 and 7. But that's not really taken us forward very far, has it? 6. Oh, I tell you what I can do. I can limit those 2 squares, because in my assumption about getting to the 24 total, I gave these 2 squares a 1 and a 2. So, yeah, hang on. So this can be, this is either 1 and 2, or it's 1 and 3, because anything else is making this overall green total too large. It's either adding up to 24 or 25. So if I was to say make this 1 and 4, that's taking us up too high. That's taking us to 26, which we can't get to. 26 minimum, I should say, which we can't get to. So what we know is that there is definitely a 1 in one of these 2 squares. Now, can I do something with that? So if the 1 is here, there's a 1 here. No, easier than that. Right, let's just look at these 2 squares. We know that one of them is a 1. So look what that does in box 4. 1 is not in that domino. Now, if 1 is not in that domino, it's actually profound. I still have not got a Scooby-Doo where 1 goes in this box. I really don't know. But I do know it's in one of those 5 cells. And those 5 cells are all in column 2 and column 3 of the puzzle. Now, the 1 in box 1 is definitely in column 2 or column 3. So as we slide down column 1, have we managed to put a 1 into any of those 7 cells? No, and we can't. There cannot be a 1 in any of those cells. So there must be a 1 in this domino at the bottom. We know there's 1 in this column somewhere, and therefore it must go there. So we actually get the 1 in box 7. Yeah, okay, and this is not... It's not that surprising, but it now means that there will end up being a digit in common between these 3 squares and these 2 squares. It's impossible for there not to be. Because whether, if this is 6, you've got a 2, 3 here. If this is 7, you've got a 2, 4 here. And there'll always have to be, even if this was an 8, you're either going to get a 2 or a 3 on that triple. So this square here is going to be the common digit between those 5 cells. I'm not sure we actually know what that common digit is, or even if we can limit it somewhat. I think it has to be a 2, 3 or a 4. I think it does have to be 2, 3 or 4. Is it possible that the common digit is not one of those digits? It's just not, is it? It's slightly hard to see, but the 8 arrow would be 1, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 5. So there would definitely be a 2 or a 3 on the 8 arrow. And that's weird. The problem is this could be the 8 arrow though. So if this was a 6, 7 pair, there would be a common 2, and this would be a 2. If one of these is the 8, it's going to depend on what the other one is, but it's going to force a 2 or a 3. Or is it possible that's a 4? I'm sort of thinking it's not. But the reason I'm thinking it's not, it's just a feeling. And it's because if I go 7, 8 here, I suppose if it was 8 and it was 1, 3, 4 versus a 7 that was 2, 4. Now I think that could be a 4. Bobbins. Right, I might be wrong about that. I'm not seeing that terribly clearly for some reason. So you'll have to forgive me. We need to look somewhere different. So where do we look? I don't feel like I really don't think I know anything about the top of the grid. Is that a mistake? Is there something at this top end of the grid that I'm meant to be appreciating? I've got a 1 here now. Is that doing something at the bottom of the grid? I really don't think it is. I mean, I was always expecting there to be a 1 in one of those 3 cells. Can we do more in, you know, this region of the grid? Well, what I will tell you is it's far from clear to me I can do more. If that's 7, what happens? If that's 7, that's got to be 8 then, because we must get to at least 24. So if that's 7, that's 8. We don't know what the makeup of the 8 is. Could still be 134 or 125. The common digit here would be what? If that's a 7, you'd have 6 and 8 into those squares. So you'd have 1, 2, 3 along here. And then the 8 would either be 1, 2, 5, in which case there would be a 2 here. Or it would be 1, 3, 4, in which case there would be a 3 here. So you get a 1, 2, 3 triple in this row. But because you don't know what the 8 is, what the makeup of the 8 is, whichever way round it was, I still don't think you know that digit. Sorry, I don't think that's very good. I don't think I know. So let's try and rule out the other one. If this is 8, on the other hand, then we don't know what that is, do we? Because then we don't know whether we're heading up towards 24 or 25. If this is 8, you get a 6, 7 pair in the circles in column 1 that are not this one, which means that you have a common 2, which means this square is a 2. Ah, right, okay. Right, this is incredibly complicated, but I think we can now say this square is always 8. Because, let's go through this. It's very simple to say that this is an 8 if this is a 7. Because if this is 7, we know that these green squares add up to at least 24. So we need this to be an 8 in order for that to happen. So that's the simple version. Now, what about the complicated version? What happens if this square is an 8? Why do I still think this square is an 8? Well, it's because when this is 8, one of these arrows is a 6 arrow, so that'll have 2 and 3 into these squares. One of them will be a 7 arrow, so it'll be 1, 2, 4. So the common digit between these 5 squares is 2, and 2 gets placed here. Why does this matter? Well, that makes those 2 squares 1 and 3, which uses up a degree of freedom, because the minimum value for those squares is 21, plus 1 plus 3 is 25, which means I still need, in that situation, this square to be an 8 in order for this to be possible. So we've got no clue what this square is, but we do know that whatever this square is an 8. Therefore, that's not an 8. That's not an 8. And if that's not an 8, we now know where the 8 goes in this row. It must go here. Oh, I switched to the wrong thing. That's an 8. That's no longer an 8. Which feels like a mighty breakthrough, but hasn't done anything at all. Has it done anything? Have we got some Sudoku we can do? Can 8 go on this arrow? The answer, I think, is yes, unfortunately. If that was a 1, 8, that could be a 9. That would still leave a 1 here. That could be a 1. Oh, bobbins. This puzzle's not easy. It really isn't. Okay. So what on earth is this telling me? Sorry, I'm really quite stuck here. No, hang on. That might be a good thought. Right, what I'm thinking is I can't now put 8 in either of the purple circles in row 9. So I'm getting Oh, look, no, it's better than that. It's much better than that. I'm so slow sometimes. 6, 7, 8 in column 1. So actually, I can't even put 8 here in row 9. So where does 8 go in row 9? The answer is I haven't got a clue, but it is on an arrow. So it must go with a 9. So the 8 is not there. That's a 3-cell arrow. You can never put an 8 on a 3-cell arrow. Oh, good grief. This is incredible. Look, you can't put 8 here in this domino. Why not? Well, because then we know either this circle or this circle would have to be a 9. Now, what would need to accompany the 8 on its arrow for one of those to be a 9? 1, which is impossible in row 8. That is ridiculous. So 8 is now, I think 8 is locked on this arrow, which makes it a 1, 8 arrow and makes this a 9, and that unwinds our X-wing. We can now get rid of our purple colours, I think, and take another stare at the grid, where we've got... What have we got? What have we learned from this? That's the question. I hope you can't hear the rain, by the way. It's absolutely hammering down outside today. 8s and 9s in box 8 are locked into this 2x2. I can't put 9 on the arrow. Okay. Yeah, okay, I can get the 9 in box 7, sorry. Look, where does 9 go in this box? The answer is not on an arrow. So the 9 is in one of those 2 cells, which is looking at that square. So this square is a 9. Now, in fact, look, just by Sudoku, there's got to be a 1 in this triple. Now let's just check 8. In this box... Oh, this is nice. Right, so now the restriction that got the 9 up here applies to the 8 as well. Yeah, it does, because I can't put 8 on an arrow anymore in this box. Because if I put 8 on an arrow, that's implying I need to put 9 in its circle and 1 on the arrow. Now 1 cannot go on an arrow anymore in box 8. So you can't put 8 on an arrow. So 8 is in the same positions as 9. So 1 has to go there. And these squares are an 8-9 pair. Which might matter, I feel. I've just got to figure out why. This is meaning this square is no longer an 8, look. Can we do better than that? Yeah, well, I can keep going with 8s, can't I? That square's now an 8 by Sudoku. So 8 is really restricted now in this box. Look, it's got to be in one of 2 places. 8's got to be in one of 2 places in box 6. 8 in box 1. Yeah, no. Yes, sort of. Yes, it's good enough. Where does 8 go in box 1? So by Sudoku, we can rule it out of those squares. We can rule it off a 3-cell arrow. So it must be in one of these 2 squares. Now that really matters, look, because now it's seeing that square, which can't be an 8 anymore, and must be a 7. And that must be an 8. And this square's become a 6 because it can't be a 7. And that square's become an 8 because it can't be a 6 or a 7. And suddenly we have a little breakthrough down here. So now our 6 arrow has got a 2 and a 3 on it. Our 8 arrow... Ah, this is nice. No, it's not. Oh, I thought I was going to be able to fix what this is. If it's 1, 3, 4, that would have to be a 3. If it's 1, 2, 5, this has to be a 2. So this is no longer a 4. So this is a... now I've got a 1, 2, 3 triple in row 4. And what do we need into those squares? We need 4s, 5s and 7s. That can't be a 7, look. So there's a 7 up here. So there's a 7 in one of these 3 squares by Sudoku, and there's a 7... Right, this is interesting. Where do we put... Oh, no, it's not quite as good as I thought. Is it? Well, what we can't do is put 7 there, because then this wouldn't have a value. It couldn't be 8 or 9. Now, if this is 7, unfortunately, I think we could put 2 here and 9 here. So that might work. So I think 7 is locked into one of 2 places. If we can get rid of 2 from here, then we might be cooking with gas. 8. How many 8s have I got in the grid now? Oh, really not that many, actually. 8 in this box has to be in this domino. So, okay. So we have to think harder. How do we do that? I don't know. We've got 2... Got 1, 2, 3, 4. So these squares are 4, 5, 6, and 7. So, hang on a minute. We might be able to do some sort of thermometer type logic down here. This square clearly is the sum of that square, which is at least 2, and this square, which is at least 4. So this must be 6 or 7. This square, by the same token, therefore, can't be 6 or 7. Now that gives us a 4, 5 pair, which is nice. So now this is a 6, 7 pair. Now that square, therefore, must be restricted. So if this is 6, this would have to be 2 or 3. If this is 7, this has to be 2, exactly. So this is 2 or 3. Now, can we do the same thing here? Yes, we can. If this is 4, this would have to be 2 or 3. If this is 5, this has to be 1 or 2, and it can't be 1. So there's a 2, 3 pair here. This square's a 4 or a 5. Okay. I'm not sure how much further I can take this. It looks like it's running out of gas. Oh dear. Oh, I know what I can do. I can do something simple. Those add up to 24 now, so I now know. I know lots of things. Oh, good grief, this is important. If I know the greens add to 24, and I do, then they are absolutely minimized. They have to be tiny. So I think probably the most... So, well, first thing is, this has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that square's a 7. That's not a 7. These 2 squares have got to be a 1, 2 pair now, so they are not 3, which means that's become a 3. This is important. This is so lovely now. Look at this column. Where does the 2 go? The answer, we're not sure, but it's definitely in that domino. Once it's in this domino, this 8 has got to be 1, 3, 4 because it can't be 1, 2, 5 anymore. And now it bounces back in column 1. Where does the 4 go? Well, it can't be there anymore because there's a 4 in there. So this has become a 4. That must be 5, 7. This has become a 5. You can't partner 5 with a 6 on the arrow because the 1 isn't available, so it partners 7. That becomes a 6. This becomes a 2 by mathematics. This becomes a 3. This becomes a 9 by mathematics. That's an 8. And that's a 4. And all of a sudden, look, we have a bit less daylight in this puzzle. And after all, that is the idea of Sudoku. Get rid of the whiteness and replace it with blueness. 5, 6s and 7s into those squares. That's not 7. Now, can we keep this going? I can see I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4 quadruple in column 3, look, which must mean I need 5s, 6s and 7s into the open positions. Now, that might be important because that definitely can't be 7. So this square has to be a 1 or a 2, which gives me a 1, 2 pair in that box. That means there's a 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so these squares have got to be 4, 5 or 6 by Sudoku. There's a 4 in one of these two, which means there's no 4 up there. I've now got a 1, 2, 3 triple in this column. Those two squares are a 2, 5 pair by Sudoku, look, which removes 5 from that one. It's so close to being useful, but it's just not. This square is a 6 or a 7. Okay, so we get to this position, and we're going to have to take another look. We can... Right, what can we do? How do we make more progress? An incredible puzzle. I mean, imagine coming up with this as your third of a puzzle. It's just bonkers how clever some of these people are. Do I know what this 9 arrow is? I really don't feel like I do. I mean, I can see it's not 1, 8, but that still leaves a lot of options. So... Okay. Apologies, as usual, if there is an easy thing that I'm missing here, then you're quite right to chastise me. But I promise you I'm not trying to be slow, even if that might be the appearance that I'm giving. This column, perhaps? I need 2, 3, 5 and 6. It's a bit desperate to pencil mark this, but I will do it. 2, 3, 5 and 6. That's not 3. I don't like this. This is not sudden. It's suddenly really dug its heels in, hasn't it? The 9 arrow. There seems to be a lot of options here, especially as I can repeat digits. Ah, right, okay, that can't be a 2. That's a weird one. That can't be a 2 because it breaks this arrow, I think. Because if it's a 2, you've got to put 1, 5 in there. And now that arrow is a 2, 6 arrow. And 2 and 6 don't add to 7, so that is not a 2. That's a 1. That at least takes us a little bit further forward, look. So we get a 1 here. In fact, that 2 is nice. That gives me a 2 and a 3 down there and a 3 at the top of the grid. And now I've got a 1, 4 pair, which probably doesn't do very much. By maths, this square's a 6 now, because 1 and 6 obviously need to make the 7. That gives me a 4, 5 pair here, which is nice. That gives me 7s and 5s. That's a 7, that's a 6. We can remove 2 6s from those squares. I might revisit these in a minute, actually, and make sure that we haven't found out something about those 3 circles that we need to use. Okay, so I'm not quite sure if we can go further with this. So this 8 arrow needs either 3 4 or 2 5 into those. Oh, I see, and that's sort of mirrored here, look. Although we've got much more real estate in column 4 and 5, so let's check these 2 squares. Yeah, which must add up to 7. And can't be 1 6, so it's 2 5, which would have to be exactly this way round, or 3 4, which would have to be exactly that way round. Well, that doesn't look like it's done anything at all. And then depending what that ends up being, that will end up being the opposite. This arrow? It's not when I looked at it last time, I don't think I had that 3, because I think I had 3 options left for this. Now 3 6 and 1 8 aren't possible, so this is either 2 7 or 4 5, both of which are going to have 1 option each way. So 2 7 is going to be that way round, 4 5 is going to be this way round. Now that does give us a 2 4 pair in column 4. So we're looking for, now we ask a good question, where does 7 go in column 4? And those 2 7s tell us the 7 must go here, which must leave behind a 1 6 pair. And 7s, there's a 7 in one of those 2 cells. Okay. And does it just run dry again there? Probably. I'm going to do this trick again. I did it with that square, but look, if you pick 4 for that square, this becomes a 4 5 arrow, but that forces that arrow to be a 2 here and a 3 here, and 2 2 and 3 do not add up to 9, so that can't be a 4 and has to be a 2. It's very interesting the way that works. I don't quite understand why it should be so, but it does seem to be useful. Now look, we now need a 2 5 pair to complete this row. Now, what's that done for us? Anything? Yes, look at that. So now, where does 7 go in box 3? It goes in the same 2 positions. We've got 9s. So this is a 7 9 pair. This is really the only arrow. In fact, it is. Other than trivialness, which this one deserves the label of, we've just got to sort this funny sort of spiral galaxy out, and then we're good to go. 7 is very restricted. Goodness, if that's a 7, what do you put on this arrow? Well, you can't put 1 6 or 2 5, because if you put 1 6 in this domino, you're breaking this square. If you put 2 5, you're breaking that square. So in fact, if this is 7, this is 3 4, and look, there's a 4 there. This could be important. So 4 3 would be the only way of completing this arrow if that's a 7. If it's a 9, it's more restricted at the top than at the bottom, I think. At the bottom, it can't be 1 8 or 2 7, so it's 3 6. Which looks completely possible, or 4 5, which is also an option, though the 4 would have to be here. That's disappointing. Let's look at it the other way round. If this is 9, what's that? Well, it's not 1 8 2 7 or 3 6. That would be 4 5. So if that's 9, that's 4 5. So this can't be 4 5, because this square could not be a 4 or 5. So if this is 9, This is 3, 6, I think. Yes, can't be 1, 8, 2, 7 or 4, 5. So if this is 3, 6... Oh. Rather annoyingly, I think it can be either way round, so we have to add those to those squares. Now, do we have to have 6 in this one as well? I think we do. So now we've got 3, 6 both ways round, and if this is a 7, we've got 3, 4 here. Oh, that was very disappointing. Oh no! There's nothing else to do apart from Sudoku. Have I missed some Sudoku here? Probably is the answer. I hear you all shouting. Let's have a look at this row. So I need 1, 4, 5 and 6. So that's 4, 5 or 6. Oh, I see. And now you can see that if this is 7, that's going to have to be 1, 6. If it's 9, it's going to have to be 4, 5. Ah, right, it's not 9. Cool. This is another tricky step, though. If this is 9, it breaks. And it breaks because this has to be a 4, 5 pair to make the 9 arrow work. But now, where do you put 1 in this box? The answer is only there. But remember, this is a 3, 6 arrow. If this is 9, you have to put 3 and 6 on this arrow, and you kind of have to put 1 here by Sudoku. And now this square's broken. So that's probably what we're meant to spot. This square is not 9. That's going to have to be 7. That's 9. Now we now know this is a 3, 4 pair, and we know which way round it goes. Which is going to get rid of some options, look, in this column. And we know this must be 1, 6. It's not 2, 5 or 3, 4. So we can get that done. Whoa, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to get rid of the 6 as an option. Ah, but now I get the 4, the 1, the 5, the 6 down there, look. Oh, this is nice. 5 and 7 all get resolved. That fixes the 5 and the 2. That's not 2 anymore. There's a 2, 5 pair in this row. So what else do we need? 3s and 4s into those 2 squares. There's a 4 here, so that's a 3. That's a 4. That's a 5 because of this 2. That should be a 2 and a 5. This is a 1 or a 6. Well, it's not a 6 because there's a 6 at the bottom. That becomes a 1. Get rid of the 5s from these squares. And there's a 2 here. This is nice. 2 and 6 go in. Those 2 squares have got to be 5 and 9, I think. Now that might not be resolved yet. Let's get rid of the 4s in the corner of that box. This column is almost done, isn't it? So this is a 2 or a 4. There's a 2 here. Lovely. We get that one as well. 2 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 9. That must be an 8, 9 pair. There's a 9 here, which tells us the order. 8 and 1, 1 and 6. 6 goes here. This square's a 3. If I've not made an error, that square's a 2. 2 and 3 mean that square's a 4, and that square's a 3. And suddenly, we've done it! Out of nowhere! Wow! That's an incredibly impressive puzzle. It's extremely intricate. I've probably missed umpteen things during that solve, to be honest. I felt that I was really having to grapple with these squares to make them work. But it was lovely logic, it really was. And the highlight of the whole puzzle for me was the 8's position in this row. That was absolutely beautiful, that you couldn't put 8 here because you'd need one on these strange spidery arrows down there, and this one ruled it out, and that gave us a 1-8 pair here, which really broke the puzzle open because it fixed the 9 X-wing. And then we weren't off and away because we had several stallings along the route, but we did at least make some progress. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.